So yes, Dr. Green and I are rather newcomers to the group. So she had shared some ideas that we had had for some other projects with Julie, and she said, well, that really fits in with what the education has been working on. And so largely what we have done is to complement those online learning objects. So our scrub kits, a fun name, our Science Creates Real Understanding of Biosecurity, with the idea that we can incorporate a little STEM education with the curriculum and do more hands-on activities. So I work a lot with youth and definitely know when we can engage youth by actually doing activities, they're more likely to remember those concepts, pay attention, and have a little bit more fun at the same time. So that's what we're trying to do. And again, trying to reinforce some of the concepts that maybe they already would have taken from those online learning objects. Again, the STEM-centric idea, everybody knows in education we're really trying to promote STEM, and especially in the animal sector, we have a lot of females, and so I always like to encourage our female students into STEM as well. So it's definitely for a youth audience, that same group of our 6 to 12-year-old, or 6 to 12th grade, rather, kids that are involved in animal agriculture. So that would be the same FFA and 4-H group. What's unique, from that youth perspective, which maybe a lot of people don't always realize, is youth are always really participating in animal exhibition. They take their animals places, and those animals come back, and they're intermingled with a lot of animals. So for instance, in Oklahoma, we have something called the Oklahoma Youth Expo. So that happens in March during spring break, and 7,000 kids bring their animals to be exhibited in one location. That's 7,000 kids, well, they all breed more than one animal. So you can imagine how many animals are intermingled there in that one facility, and then all go home. And they're kids. So we really want to get them thinking about how do we do things more correctly. So our audience is the youth, but we're also thinking who's going to deliver this education. And so that's our FFA teachers, maybe our 4-H volunteers, extension educators. So trying to build instructor modules that would be able to distribute then to the kids. So the idea here is that if you've ever done any little science projects with kids, you have instructor guides. So the instructor guides help them have the background and information that they need. So sort of give them a little background in animal disease, etc. And then the student guide would be that pared down version, what they're going to write, take notes on, etc. And so our instructor guides would have the materials list, what they're going to need. It's like feedback here. Discussion questions, and then we also created some appendices for them that would have some guides about diseases, how they're transferred, etc., so that those instructors would have that extra information. So we really wanted to have engaging curriculum, really make sure it's tied to animal agriculture so that it's not some esoteric concept, but what are they doing on their daily lives, with the idea that we create behavior change. So that's our whole goal of using this behavioral science approach, is hopefully we can get them visualizing things and then again create some behavior change. So the topics are essentially centered around some of those that are in the learning objects, but we had to pick out things that, well, what can we do that can turn into little experiments in the classroom? So they center around disease transfer, cleaning and disinfecting. We also have some vaccine handling pieces, also with the importance of vaccine, and then building a biosecure farm. So again, taking those same concepts and doing it more in a hands-on way. So with the instructor guides, we would say, okay, if we're going to talk about disease transfer, we created sort of a really easy way for the instructors to find some diseases they might want to talk about. So whether they want to talk about some porcine diseases or bovine, or whatever your kids have an interest in, we have kind of a quick handy list to say, here you can go talk about this disease and what happened as a result of it. So a way to get the kids engaged. I think that's in that idea. And then we would have some sort of activity that would model that disease transfer. So in this case, we used something that can model disease transfer. So essentially, this whole little idea is you take some powdered milk and cornstarch. If you react it with betadine, you can have diseased animals show up. So they can mix and share fluids with cups. After experimenting with this, you do have to tell the children not drinking it. It is important. So there are a few tips in there. And then the idea is they would have to go back and find who was patient 0 by tracking who exchanged fluids. So just kind of a way to visualize how disease can transfer. And then the discussion would center around bringing it back to the animal level. How would that happen in animal systems, and where would you predict disease transfer there? So it's always to bring it back to animal systems. So the next group of activities are about cleanliness and disinfectant. So again, the instructor could talk about some real examples of disease outbreaks. We also give them a list of common animal diseases. So again, the instructor does not have to be an expert. They can just pick something out of their animal disease guide. And again, we could say, we're looking for cattle ones. We want some that go across species, some that are zoonotic. Do they have vaccinations? We're not trying to teach the kids this. Again, it's just for the instructors to have something that's relatable, that they could sort of model that discussion. So then we do some things that are pretty simple. So within the learning object, there's a video guide on how to wash hands correctly. So we could have the kids using some glow germ product test how good they are at washing their hands, and then follow the video guide and retest that so they can actually see what happens, and then bring that discussion back to, well, when you're handling your animals, are you supposed to be washing your hands every time, between certain sets? So that's sort of that classroom discussion. When is this really important that we're being really, really thorough with washing your hands? Because we all know the kids are not going to wash their hands all the time. That's just reality. So what are those key moments that might be important? So then we have some pieces that are related to animal housing systems and facilities. What are they built out of? So if you've ever been to fairs and exhibition buildings, the animal housing systems are built with all sorts of materials. Some are easy to disinfect, some are not. But a lot of people don't really think about that when they're placing animals in new facilities. So we do some kind of fun things and we made some fake manure. We figured it wasn't a good idea to use real manure. So we use some potting soil, add some glow germ powder so that you can see how well you clean it. And so then the kids can work in groups to see who can clean their materials the fastest, using things that mimic wood surfaces, cement surfaces, plastic surfaces, all of the things that you would have to disinfect or clean in animal facilities. And again, the gamification is they have to see which team can do it the best or the fastest, to add a little bit of fun there. And then bring that back to, how many times have you cleaned the stall before your animal is placed in it to an animal exhibition? Or when you go to the livestock show, do you really make sure everything's clean? So again, trying to get them that visualization. This is really important stuff that we don't always actually think about. And then this is actually my favorite one. So the importance of following directions on disinfectants. So what we actually did here, and so the whole idea, I forgot about this activity kit, is it's pretty cheap. So we did things where we used cardboard boxes to create incubators and just styrofoam, and just tried to make this super, super affordable, thinking about ag teachers with budget. So it's really kind of a DIY sort of system. So we used some basic agar plates and sent them out with some boots to say, okay, here's what happens if you just, bang your feet on the ground as cleaning them. Pretty common technique, right? And so swab those versus what cleaning is to a lot of people. So swab those. Then used disinfectant, but we did not remove organic material. And then the best plate there is a boot that was completely disinfected, following all of the protocol. So the fun part then is you can put them on agar plates, grow them, and so it allows a really fun visualization of, oh yeah, you actually do have to follow directions for something to be disinfected. So just kind of a fun way to see what happens. And then the vaccine cooler, we're not actually building this kind of vaccine cooler. We did a trying to emphasize, yes, vaccines are important, which we hope people will do, but how you handle vaccines are important as well. So a lot of producers may leave the vaccine where it's warm, or you just throw it in the truck on the way home, rather than having it in a cooler. So we did some testing with some indoor-outdoor temperature gauges and had them build coolers to see how effective a homemade cooler can be at actually handling vaccine. So they can track how long it takes for a cooler to come to temperature. So it turns out you can't just put it in and it's good, right? Everything has to come to temperature, how long it will hold temperature, etc. So just sort of a fun physics problem for them to figure out how you can use some simple items. Essentially, we used water bottles and insulation and cardboard box again to actually create vaccine coolers. So again, just a lot of hands-on activities for kids to do that gets their science brain engaged. They get to learn how to plate things, grow bacteria that they may not be typically doing in their schools. So just some fun ways to bring home some of the concepts that are related to biosecurity. So we were in the development phase, and so the next phase is now okay, let's see if this translates very well. So certainly it all makes sense to me in my head, and I can get graduate students to follow along and follow directions, but can we expand that out to youth audiences, still have them follow directions? For instance, I already learned you have to tell them, well, when you get the glow gem on your hand, you're not supposed to just go put it on each other. So some of those little tips, working with kids that you kind of have to bring back to reality. So that's what we're doing going forward is how well does it translate to the educators, how well does it translate to the kids, and what, if any, behavior change do we secure, and do we master those concepts? So, and that's the end of my presentation.